Hi, everyone. My name is Jerry Huntman. I'm the Managing Director of IFWG Publishing. It's a pleasure to be the host for this very impromptu launch, which I think is really more like a casual conversation, but I'm sure it'll be very interesting. Before I pass you on to Warren and to Cary, who's the man in spotlight, I just wanted to say a few things because being a publisher based in Melbourne and now based in the Gold Coast, I've never had the real opportunity to be at a launch of the books that we've published for Cary, and this is the sixth now. And so having a virtual launch is a nice way of at least being able to get a little closer. When we first started the series and when we negotiated with Cary the book deal, the thing that really attracted us to Cary and his work was the immense amount of world building that was inherent in the storyline, and we know that there are many role players and people in the role playing industry that have transitioned to writing, but there are many who haven't, many more who haven't, and Cary was one of those people who got through to writing narrative like duck to water. Um, he started as a less than experienced writer, but very quickly sort of got into his stride, and we're most pleased by that. But more importantly than anything is that the world building is A class. It's just fantastic. And we know that it extends more beyond narrative and some of the short fiction that I believe he's written too. It extends to his role playing, to his Patreon, even to things like the culinary arts. So we're very, very pleased for him. And we also look forward to working with him for the next two books, running to number 8, which will be the conclusion. Now, before I pass you over to the two people who are going to be in conversation, I should say that we have like a door prize, a virtual door prize, um, and what that basically means that anyone who likes this stream in Facebook, hits the like button, or even makes comments like hi, or perhaps even wanting to say something, um, you will be in a draw, and 3 people will be picked out, and I'll get in touch with those 3 people, and you can have the pick of the 6 books, whichever one of the 6 books that has been published thus far, shipped over to you in physical form. Or if you really want electronic form, well, we're happy to do that. Now, I believe that Cary and Warren are still getting themselves together. So if you can have patience, I'll just get the splash screen up again. And when he's available, then I'll introduce you to them. Hi there again. We have Warren Nichols, who's our guest, who's going to be in conversation with Cary, who's the man in spotlight. So over to them.
That's to you, Warren.
Okay, so we're up live. I'll just clear that off the screen. Right. Okay. Now I'm a very old friend of Cary's, known him and his wife for about 50, oh, nearly 50 years. So he picked me to do this. Cary, would you like to start with just how you got started with this, if people don't already know.
Right. Well, this is the 6th book of an 8-book trilogy. I started out at one of the thylacons we had down here, where George Martin and I were doing a series of world building panels. And I'd been working with people and helping them build worlds for quite a while, and I've been running world building panels both at a Worldcon and quite a few NatCons. And so I was doing this one with George, and I'd been using as examples some of the things I was doing for my gaming. And George looked at what I had and looked at what I'd done and said, look, it's time you stopped reading my books and started writing your own. And I thought about this for a bit and had a chat with Marion de Pierres, who was also there, and said, do you think I could? And she said, well, yes, but don't write one book. Publishers are getting very leery of people who say they've got a trilogy in them and they don't ever produce. So I thought, oh, that's okay, I'll just write 3 books. So I did, and each of those 3 books was very large. And so 3 books became 6, and then 7, and then apparently they were still too large, and Jerry allowed me to make it 8. So it's an 8-book trilogy that started, and it's all the fault of George Martin.
Okay, at least it hasn't turned into a 20-odd trilogy like Piers Anthony wrote on Sand. No. Okay. What actually started you on world building? Or was it just a natural outgrowth of what you were?
It was an outgrowth of gaming. We started gaming in 1976 with D&D and Traveller. And it made me curious about how worlds start to tick. My actual degree is in sociology, so I'm very interested in people and how they act in societies. One of my big hobbies is history, and we've got 1,000 books just on history in the library. And so all these things started to come together. It always annoyed me in a lot of the gaming sessions that the price lists are unrealistic. And I went, well, how hard is it to research how much a sword actually costs? What sort of coin is a gold piece anyway?
Or what's its value in cows?
Or what's its value in cows, actually? Yes, yeah, actually, it's a really good one. I mean, a numismata, for instance, was one sitting over there. The numismata, 3 of those was the average tax for an Eastern Roman farmer. How much and it's made of bronze.
Right, yeah, it's like the old problem of how much is a talent. It's what a man can carry.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
Someone like Peter Dinklage, what could he carry?
That's
or
right.
Andre the Giant is the other other end of the spectrum. But yeah, it's a real problem sometimes. Okay, next. I think the next point is: did you consider doing this as an alternate history version of our current world, or just going with something completely new that you developed yourself?
I couldn't conceive of an alternate history of Earth that would involve the range of creatures, the some of the plot elements that I wanted to put in, and I made a deliberate choice when I was doing this that if I was going to be building my own world, I wanted it completely different in some respects. For instance, time. Time is based around 6 on Vhast. Everyone has 6 fingers on their hands, 6 toes. A month has 36 days. 2 hands of months make up a year. So a hand is a natural measure because it's you can see it in nature all around you. So I wanted to play with doing things like that with my world building.
Yeah.
And I wanted to play with different races. I wanted to try and subvert a lot of the tropes. So, for instance, goblins live for about 250 to 300 years. They're not the short-lived disposable greenskins.
Yeah. Not the usual cannon fodder that they use.
That's right.
Pardon me, that orcs are. Pardon me. Okay. All right. Now, mapping out your world. You've got one of your maps here. What was your starting point for this?
Oh, that's a good. Whoa, I've never done anything about being asked. What's the starting point for a map?
Can we hold that? Oh, not sure if that's
Yeah, that works at about that distance quite well.
Okay.
Right, tilt it that way. That is the map of one of the continents of Vhast. I say one of the continents. It's the one where most of the action of the books take place. As we get on to books, well, the last book, book 8, you'll actually move to another continent briefly. And if you look at the novellas take place on several different continents. Now, what I wanted for a continent is that I wanted to have an equivalent of Mongols. So I needed plains, lots of plains. I wanted a mountain range, which means we've got a fault line running up and down here, which means automatically we've got the possibility of volcanoes. I wanted the mountain. I wanted desert areas, and so they're obviously in the rain shadow of the mountains. So I set up things so that areas that are going to be receiving moisture have more vegetation. This area just before the mountains, where the wind's going to be coming up here, this is what's called the swamp, and then we've got Haven or Sharan there. So it gets drier and drier and drier as we move across, and more rainfall. It's like the west coast of Tasmania, right? Hobart may be one of the driest cities in Australia, but the west coast, which is before the mountains, is one of the wettest places.
Okay. One question immediately arises from that is what stopped the Mongols moving into the richer pasture land here?
They don't like trees.
Okay, fair enough.
No, because there is conflict. Particularly there's conflict around freehold here, where freehold kept trying to push into the plains. So these towns here are much more insecure than, say, the ones down in the capital down here. There's natural passes around here that I've defended. There's a castle called Bar, which is, the name becomes obvious why it's called Bar.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Now, what prompted that question was a theory that the Mongols kept moving west into Europe because the further west they went, the better the pastures got.
Oh, the pasture's pretty good here.
Yeah.
Right, this is pretty good pasture here. It's pretty good across there actually. It's not a low rainfall area.
Right. Okay.
This is the low rainfall.
That would help. Yes. Okay.
Right. So, but this is good grass.
Okay. All right. That clears that up.
The dominant grass is like Australia, Poa labellidia, or tussock grass, which is nutritious even when it dries out.
Yeah.
Horrible when you're a horticulturalist and went to an agricultural school.
Yes. Well, anyway, now the different races. How many are there and why?
Right. Well, we don't have orcs. We have Carl because there's possible copyright issues there. There are within the Carl several races. 5. You've got the Olokai. equivalent. You've got basically a dark troll equivalent. You've got various races of giants who basically are very scarce. You have ogres, and the ogres are, again, subverting tropes. The ogres are basically very racist Buddhists.
Interesting. Okay.
They don't have a great regard for anyone who's not an ogre. But Batamal is their religion, which is in Old Speech, which is one of the languages I've developed. And that's the way of the all. And they seek a balance. You've got goblins. Now, goblins are like humans found on most continents. Their written language is the same on all continents. Their spoken is like Chinese. In other words, it's fragmented into very, very distinct dialects. Humans are found everywhere. The races of humans are quite distinct, and because people were put down in various places. Vhast is a constructed world. This becomes very quickly apparent in book 2. It was put together as an experiment, not by the white mice, but it was put together as an experiment to try and have something happen. Like Darkover, Vhast starts looking like fantasy and evolves itself into science fiction.
Yeah, one question that did come up or come to my mind when I read book 2, why did you introduce that element so early?
Oh, that's actually an interesting question. I didn't actually fully explain that element, but I wanted to. I think I just wanted to have her there to indicate there was something more, that it wasn't just straight fantasy.
Yeah,
It was,
after reading it, I thought possibly book 3 or maybe book 4.
Too late now.
Yeah.
Look, are there things I'd have done differently if I was starting out all over again? Almost certainly. That could be one of them.
Yeah, well, that's always the way.
I'm not going to retro it though.
Fair enough. So much work involved in that.
Well, also it's disappointing for those who followed it from the start. Yeah.
Okay. Magic. Now, this has always been one of my bugbears, is that authors don't seem to work out a logical basis for the operation of magic. What's behind yours?
You remember Randall Garrett?
Yes.
Too Many Magicians, right? Magic becomes, in that world, is a industrial process. It's part of society. It's used to do everyday things. That's the sort of magic I wanted. I didn't want the magic that was remote, that was only practiced by a couple of people in high castles, hiding away from the world, or wandering around in grey robes. Right? I wanted a magic that was everyday. So over quite a few years of gaming, I developed with a lot of help from other people, a magic system where if you could think of a task, it was possible to create a spell for it. Whether you had the power to cast that spell is another question.
So how do you gain the power to cast spells?
Experience. Oh, where does your power come from? It's innate within yourself. Same as some people are stronger than others, are born stronger than others. Some people have stronger connection to the mana field. Now, some of them have a stronger connection to faith. In other words, they've got a higher piety. Some people have a stronger connection to the mana field. Some people actually have both. and they may be what's called a mage of the spirit. There's one of them in the books, Parminder.
Right.
And they could operate in either realm if they wished. But it's something you're born with. It's not something you can really train. You can get more and more power as you get experience, but the basis you're working with is your psychic ability that you're born with.
Right. Is there any real distinction between black and white magic, as there would be in our world, or is this something depending on the character who's got the power?
Only within, there's one of the religions, the witches of the swamp, basically, are the only thing where you get good. There is a clear division between good and bad, and the bad witches tend to not hang around because people know it. The same as it's very clearly, there's a number of races who are lycanthropes of different sorts. The only one we get to see a lot of are the bear folk, and the change in a bear folk will reveal very quickly whether the person is a good person or a bad person. The bad people get exiled.
Not executed, just exiled.
Exiled.
Okay.
Why
exiled instead of executed, as in the traditional method of burning at the stake or hanging?
The bear folk tend to be gentle. If you read the first of the novellas that's set 10,000 years before the books start, you get to see the origin of the bear folk. They tend to be gentle. They tend to be as non-interventionist as they can be. And so they're hoping that when they exile that person out, that person will change, right? That they'll find within them the good within themselves, and be welcomed back.
So what happens if a person comes back without having changed?
They'll get killed.
Right. Okay. So it does come to that in the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Religion. How many are there and why?
I'm not sure actually how many religions there are because I haven't explored them all yet. Okay, among the Chin, who are on one other continent, they're basically 10 Chinese. They have both Buddhist and Taoist. Right, no problem. Among the Swami north of them, they're shamanistic. On the main continent here, the Khitan have their own shamanistic beliefs. Down in Freehold, they're Catholic. When you find a Christian anywhere else on here, they're most likely going to be Orthodox, except for the Brotherhood, who are the worst aspects of Cromwellian Protestantism.
Right. Okay.
The Swamp are Wiccan, Charan are Hindu. The Dwarves have their own religion. Up and down the mountains, the wild tribes have various religions. I already mentioned the Ogre one. Down in the Caliphate, of course, they're Muslim and they're Shiite, which it's easy to pick up.
Okay. Does the Catholic Church have any equivalent of the Inquisition?
Very definitely. Very definitely. This is an area I explore a bit in the novellas. Originally, they were basically all a form of Orthodox, but several hundred years ago was the Great Schism. I don't want to get into why the Great Schism happened, but it wasn't due to a human intervention.
Right, I was about to ask why.
It's not due to a human. Basically, it's a fantasy. There's the classic battle between good and evil. There always has to be. The Xingzhu, who are the original creators, versus the Divine, who are the the Xingzi give rise to the idea of angels across the universe. The Divine give rise to, best way to say it would be legends of vampires and things.
Okay. Within any of the churches, are you getting or going to develop any conflict as you get between the popes and the Holy Roman Emperors, which basically ripped Europe apart for quite a few hundred years?
In the past of freehold, yes, it has happened.
Right. Okay.
I actually have a history of a rough history of freehold going back several thousand years, so yes, it has happened. What I'll write about it, or if I'll write anything, or leave it up to fans or whatever, I don't know. But yes, there has been that conflict.
Okay, on that subject, we've got a comment here from Gillian Pike. I now want there to be a conciliar movement to follow the Great Schism.
Oh, Gillian, oh my God. You'll have to wait for book 8. All I can say is that there's a lot of change in the world by the end. You're basically looking at the breaking of an age. The books cover the breaking of an age and the start of a new one. There's a lot happens at the end of book 8. Thank you. Yes, there's an awful lot happens at the end of book 8, covered partly in one of the novellas that I've written so far, and I still haven't finished book 8, and I'm going to. This is one of the things that I talk about. I won't go past there.
Yeah. Okay, breaking of an age sounds a bit ominous. I'm assuming it'll be something like wholesale warfare, or not, or don't know.
Not this. Well, you've been following. There's been warfare going on right through the books. I mean, there's the brothers get destroyed completely. The Catan mobilise. You know, that's a lot of mobilisation going on. Freehold starts wondering what the hell's happening. There's war over in the Newfoundland. There's another continent over there called the Newfoundland. There's war going on in that at the moment, which is through the novellas. There's the bear folk leave their forests. There's battles taking place all around the place. Is there a single vast encompassing battle? No. But is there battles everywhere? Just about. There's battles out at sea. The Olilo, there's people that live out at sea. They're heavily involved. There's a culminating battle. Well, several culminating battles. The main one happens, and I can't say much because that's book 8.
Okay.
But I know there's one down here, for instance, that's quite large as well. It involves quite a few thousand people.
Okay, from this, what effect on the economy do all these battles have? I mean, this is one constant in our world. Your economies are always affected by warfare. I mean, for instance, how long can your Mongols stay mobilised?
Not for very long. They start, some of them, after the Battle of One Tree Hill, which is up here. Some of them start heading home almost straight away. It's not a culture that's set up for that. Freehold has a feudal system. It's again not set up for long-term warfare. The only place that's actually set up for long-term warfare is Darkreach, and that's basically, as you read the books, is the Byzantine Empire. So it's the Eastern Roman Empire, multiracial, multi-religious to a great extent. Well, it's more multi-religious than the Eastern.
Do they have the same sort of religious factions as the Byzantine Empire had?
there's three main religions. Well, there's really three religions in Dark Reach. You're looking at Orthodox Christianity, you're looking at Muslim, and you're looking at Church of the Living God. And the Church of the Living God worships Hrothnog, seen here. Worships Hrothnog. I mean, he's been around for over 10,000 years. He has some amazingly powerful magic. For reasons of his own, he doesn't interfere west of the mountains. But it's a stable, peaceful, with a strong paid army.
All right, now the economy. How does it work and
how does it work?
Why?
It tends to work very isolated. Luxury goods get traded though. They come across the plains on convoys. For a variety of reasons, there's not a huge amount of shipping. There's quite a bit around the coast of Dark Reach. The brothers are awful at it. The people of Neron Island and Wolfneck do a lot along the northern coast. There is trade. Things like whale oil find their way to Freehold.
Right, okay. Now, you mentioned there's not a lot of trade along the southern coast here. Why not?
Winds, mainly.
Okay.
Winds, currents, and poor harbours. A combination of those, particularly the poor harbours.
Yeah.
You have to remember that the books take place just after a plague called the Burning, where we're looking at far more severe than the Black Death. Far more severe.
That was bad enough.
And that was bad enough. I mean, there's a town called Marlene that was there, or city that was called Marlene in the swamp, and it had close to 1 million people in it. It doesn't exist now.
Right. Okay. All right. So back to the economy. What's it based on? Agriculture?
To a great extent, agriculture. Yes. There's not a huge amount of mechanisation taking place. The printing press has only just been invented, and it was done by the brothers to put out religious tracts. Right?
So what's the literacy rate? There must be some.
Literacy rate is fairly high. Most places actually do run. Even the Catholic Church runs schools for the kids. It's not huge, and the average person may not be able to read much or write much, and they may pay a scribe for anything that's important, but they've got at least the basics. They could read a simple edict that's posted on the walls. Dark Reach, completely different, full literacy.
Okay.
And they have exams at the age of 15, and if you pass the exams, you're into university. They have an organised university system. If you're a scholarship student, which even the poorest can be a scholarship student, and they will go into the university and they will get full expenses, scholarship money, accommodation, clothes, but they'll serve the empire for a certain period of time afterwards.
Okay.
So even the smallest settlements, right up here in the icy wastes of the north, Cold Keep, they will have a full range of facilities because the mages and the priests and everything have scholarship, and they're sent where the emperor wants.
Okay. Now back to the economy. There must be a certain amount of metalworking going on.
There is.
So where are there sources of iron, for instance?
One of the deliberate choices I made is there's a lot less iron. A lot less iron.
Okay. In this case, what does that do to your world's core?
It's the word vast?
Yes.
It's bigger and lighter.
Big planet, as in Jack Vance's world? Yes. Okay. Fair enough. That's a good solution to it, actually.
It's bigger, it's a lot lighter. Gravity's about the same. There's a variance. I worked it out. It's a variance of about 5% or something like that, less than 5%. But there's iron mines, for instance. There's a couple over here. There's Sassar is based on an iron mine.
Right.
That's the red dusty place that they go through. Right. That is basically iron ore. That's one of the biggest sources of iron ore.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one over here. Near Ardlark. There's smaller deposits in Freehold.
Right, we've got another comment from Nicky Dobson. Dark Reach reminds me of Jerusalem and the Crusades.
Yes, Crusader Kingdom to an extent, yes. But I wanted to, with a ruler called Hrothnog, deliberately a darkish name in terms of you'd expect him to be an evil ruler. You'd expect with Carl under several races of Carl with dark trolls. You'd expect them to the Insa Carl are part Carl. You'd expect them to be a sort of a Sauron type person. So I deliberately set out to subvert that. And yes, it's an equivalent could be Jerusalem at the best of the Crusader Kingdom.
Okay, yep, that's an interesting development. That was a good question too, Nicky. Okay, now back to metal mining. What about precious metals?
Mithril exists, in other words, titanium.
Right.
Yes, mithril is titanium. It fits all the characteristics. There are some other metals. They're valuable. I've got an exchange rate. If you really want to know how much the price of gold metals, I can tell you. It's in the price list. There's 37 pages of prices. And to work out the cost of various things, I had to know how much metals and what their exchange rate was.
Yeah. Yes, that must have been fairly difficult.
No, actually, that was easy.
Oh,
that was actually
okay.
comparatively easy.
No, because one of the... Oh, this is a sidetrack issue. I'll talk about it later, so it's not concerning your books. Okay, so we've got metal mining to a certain extent, not a huge amount.
We have gems.
Yeah, gems.
Mousehole. The action takes place around Mousehole, or a lot of it.
Yep.
Right. They mine rubies and they're pigeon blades.
That's right. Yes, I remember that.
Right.
Okay.
That is the sole source of really dark rubies. Light rubies are found elsewhere. Lapis lazuli is found, but basically most of the gems that we know are found, but often only in one location on that continent.
Okay, right.
Which gives that particular town a place in the economics of the world, right? So most of the salt of the world actually comes from over here on the side at the bottom of the swamp, where they're getting very high rainfall. They've got very humid, rather than natural salt pans. They're using magic to dry the salt out.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the evaporation.
Oh, yes. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask me? Feel free to put them through. Yes, but while I'm waiting, I'll just explain. Yes, so the salt gets mainly mined along here, some along the south coast, but not much.
Yes, I was going to ask about the drying the salt. If you're using magic,
you're using magic.
As a human,
you've got these pans that are enchanted to boil the water off, basically. Right, and you keep them under shelters.
Yeah, because if it's humid, you're not going to get much evaporation.
Unless you heat your pans.
Yes.
Taverns have ovens with variable temperature. I've got the spell worked out.
Okay.
Right.
That would be really useful for a cook, because one of the big problems in growing up with a coal burning stove.
Yes, is getting your temperatures.
Getting your temperatures right. Yes.
If you come, remember your Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yes.
If you come into the room, clap your hands, and the lights come on, what did it? I've got spells for it.
It's magic. Okay, next, any plans to publish short stories and novellas in book form?
That depends on audience response and my publisher. But it very much depends on audience response. I've got the stories. I've got them organised into sequential clumps that are small enough to publish. Some of them will only be, say, 4 novellas. Some of them might be up to 8, depending on the length. I'd love to do it because I made a conscious decision at the whole start of this project. Something I really don't like is that you're reading a long fantasy and all of a sudden they go off and tell side stories and side quests, or they go back several hundred years. That's what the novellas are for. If you're reading the novellas, you should come across things in the books that give you an Easter egg. And I'd like that to be available to people outside the Patreon environment. We had a what?
It's Gillian again. She's had a coal stove in her childhood. It was learning to use it was a skill. Or I know my mother wouldn't let anybody else use the cooking with our coal stove because it took a lot of skill, as Gillian says, to get it up to the right temperature and keep it there.
Well, you could ask Marjorie, my wife, about that. She used to make fantastic bread when we had a wood stove and lived at New Morella. But that was a skill.
Yes.
Getting it for the right to make the bread.
She used to test it by putting her hand in the oven.
It's a skill. Yes.
One that took a long time to learn.
I treat my I come from a gaming background. I don't apologise for that. I treat all my characters as if they were gaming characters, and I know what their skills are. Some of them are really good cooks. In Mouse Hole, it's not hard to work out who they are.
Yep.
Yes, so it's a complex world. It's a fun world. It's a world that I want to grow. I mean, we're nearly finished the tarot deck, for instance. We're doing I'm now experimenting and doing the beta test for the gaming set in Ashvaria, so people can actually play within the stories. The people that are taking part in that seem to be enjoying it. Yeah, it's a whole world. There's a lot to happen. There's the if anyone ever decided to do a computer game, I've got the plants drawn.
Yeah. Okay. Now, more or less, the last bit from me. I've got 7 minutes left. So okay. Go back to the armies. Actually, now you said Darkreach has its own organised army, which implies training, supplies, and recruitment. How do they go about it? We'll start with recruitment. Are they still using the old Byzantine system? Or?
It's not. You're not looking at tagmatic troops.
Right.
You're looking at a professional army. Some of the Tagma have been around. The Tagma is basically a unit size in Darkreach. Some of the Tagma have been around for millennia. If you read the story Stand of the Eighth Atraria, Atraria basically means a company of soldiers. And that tells the story of something that happened 2,500 years before the book started. And in that you find out a lot about how a couple of orphan boys grew up and they're big, they're strong, and they knew from the fact they were big and strong and didn't have much in the way of background that they were going to join the army. And they talk about, and it talks about them and their career path.
Okay. What about mercenaries? This until
Freehold.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say in our world, this was until relatively recently in history, or even into the 20th century to a small extent, mercenaries were a constant.
Yeah. You don't have any equivalent of the White Company.
Right.
Mainly because the kings of Freehold have suppressed them. You will find a lot of people who are sellswords. an awful lot of people who will sell swords. Yes, you'll have feudal retainers, but you'll find an awful lot of people who sell swords. I mean, the caravans across the plains, there are bandits, not just Catan. There's bandits. So there is a lot of work for mercenaries.
Okay. Now, trade. Where do the trade routes run?
Along there are the two main ones. They are the two main ones, plus up the river to Evilholt crossing over, and from Erave Town coming across to Glengate, and from Evilholt coming across there.
And what are they trading?
Luxury goods.
Question.
Luxury goods.
Okay.
I know where the best brandy is made. I know where the best wines are made.
Okay.
I know, all those sorts of things. Right. Brandy is actually, there's a really good fruit brandy made by the dwarves down here in the Southwest Mountains. And even better, they've got a really good fungal brandy. The best Shiraz. Oh God, I'd need to pull up my full list because I've got about 4 pages of this is where things come from.
Okay. Is this
no, the fungal one comes across from over here from Carlsbane, and that is good enough that it makes it all the way over here. It's not. You're looking at 240 Fiorino a sip, right? Fiorino is the basic unit of currency of freehold. But it's good. It's really good, and people pay it. Okay. It's a sign of wealth to be giving your guests this stuff.
Okay. Are there any, or is there such a thing as a currency of account as opposed to the real currency used by the people?
There tends to be a currency of account within kingdoms. So I've got all the currencies worked out for the different areas. I've got the equivalences worked out. Fiorinos tends to be used most of the west of the mountains.
Right.
Dark Reach, no. You won't see them at all. You'll rarely see Dark Reach coins west of the mountains.
Where can I get a bottle of the brandy?
Yeah, I'd like to. I would actually like to try it myself. I can give you some of the kumquat liqueur, which comes from from within Freehold. I've got some of that, and it's pretty good. Well beyond my price range too. I just got someone just said it might be beyond their price range. Look, I've got the lists of luxury goods. That's the key to the trade system.
Yes.
It was worthwhile for Marco Polo's family to travel from Venice across to China, right, and bring trade goods back. Silk is always going to be a trade item. Spilk even more so. Spilk is spider silk. There are species of spiders that produce their own form of silk. Spilk is a big trade item. That's worth a lot of money. Even fine quality wools.
Right, we're getting the signal to wind up. Lee Blackmore, Aussie Spec Fic and Fantasy Writers Rule, yes. Okay. That trade thing's interesting, is that there are exact parallels in our world with that. It's the amount of, they used to trade from the Red Sea around to China. A voyage would take 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And ochre travelled across Australia.
Yeah.
Right. Trade's what makes the world go round.
That's right.
The trade routes in Australia were incredibly well established. All right. Look, thank you all very much for joining in. And see you in a year.
Okay.
Look, thanks very much, guys. I appreciate your time. It was a type of a book launch, virtual book launch. We didn't say officially it's launched. That's because it really did happen in Hobart a few days back. But on the other hand, I think that it was, I think the best format was the one we chose, which was to have a conversation and also get a little bit of interplay from those who are watching the streaming as well. But I really enjoyed that. I think it gave people the taste of what I suggested right at the beginning of this transmission, and that is that that your books, Cary, really are about world building. It really is about world building, and it's a viable, enjoyable, and really a popular subcomponent of the fantasy fandom that's out there. So congratulations to you, Cary. You're still live, so you can respond if you want to.
Yeah.
And also, thank you very much, Warren, for being the counterpart, the conversationalist. Thank you.
Problem. No problem at all. I
And
enjoyed this.
Thank you particularly to everyone that joined in and offered thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was really good. So look, thanks to everyone. For those of you who have been watching this live, if you haven't liked this or if you haven't spoken, very, very quickly now, just put a like in, because then you'll be in the draw for one of 3 books that I will actually send out to you guys. So look, thank you very much. Adieu to everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And bye.
Bye.
Bye.